and welcome to episode 8 of the Dolphin Pod, exclusively on CSI Sportsnet. During today's episode, we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the CSI Cross Country Track and Field program by telling the story of that program from its start, and we cannot tell the story of CSI Cross Country Track and Field without my guest today, CSI Athletics Hall of Famer, Jeff Benjamin. Jeff, welcome to the Dolphin Pod.
Thank you. Very, very thrilled and happy to be here, and it's a wonderful thing that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Anytime a guest reaches out to me and asks to be on the show, I'm excited to have them, but I'm especially excited to have you on the show, a Hall of Famer and a student-athlete who had an immense impact here at the College of Staten Island and on the community. But we're here to celebrate the 40th anniversary of cross country, and to tell the story of the program, I felt there was no better way than to get your story and how the program came to be. Let's start from the beginning. Why did you choose the College of Staten Island? What brought you here and onto the cross country team here at CSI?
Sure. Basically, I'm a Susan Wagner High School graduate. I ran on a city championship cross country team. I was the very valuable fifth man on the team. What that usually means is when you have reunions and stuff, all four guys pay for your dinner, because if it wasn't for the fifth man, you're not going to win. But I was surrounded by some really great athletes in high school, great teachers and stuff, and I wanted to pursue a career in education. And I explored some schools here and there, but at the end of the day, College of Staten Island was worth the bang for the buck. I believe even recently, if I'm correct, U.S. News & World Report just ranked the College of Staten Island as a great bang for your buck for a quality education. And so basically I was coming here. Now, the cross-country thing is interesting. There was no cross-country team prior to 1983. However, though, in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a track and field team. I do not know if it was indoor-outdoor. Some names that come to mind who might have helped or coached with the team include Staten Island's legendary runner coach Bill Welsh, who passed away a few weeks ago at the age of 94. A professor here, a swimming coach, Professor Jabbar. But I also remember, when we went into, the plaques and the awards at the old campus, there was a Penn Relays plaque that CSI must have won in some kind of relay in the CUNY division. Okay, so the team at that era must have had some pretty good athletes on it. But, sadly, as time has gone on, I've really never been able to get much information. Quite a few people have passed on as well. But from what we know, that there was no cross-country team ever. So Joe Barisi was the athletic director at the time, and my dad reached out to Joe and inquired whether there could be a cross-country team being formed. And Joe made the effort, and there was a group of, myself included, about 10 people, boys, and about 6 girls on campus already. Some were students already, some were coming in, who expressed an interest. And 40 years ago this month, the program was born.
Well, I can certainly attest that the College of Staten Island is a great bang for your buck. Of course, I'm a 4-year student here, a graduate, and on the topic of Joe Barisi, we just inducted him to the CSI Athletics Hall of Fame earlier this year. You got a chance to be a part of that presentation. He asked you to be one of his speakers in his induction video, so a great honor for you and a great honor for me as well. We were both on the committee that helped select Joe as one of our Hall of Famers earlier this year. Right.
And, the athletic department in that era, from my perspective, you had an outstanding basketball team with Evan Pickman. Outstanding. You had a great baseball program with Bill Cowley. You had some other great programs as well. But I always felt with Joe, the right-hand man was a fellow named Sonny Grasso, who was also inducted in the...
A lot of Hall of Famers on that list.
Yeah. And Sonny would always try to reach out to people to see if they'd be interested in joining a cross-country team. And sometimes we got beginner runners and stuff, and... The greatness at that time of being in a D3 program, and any D3 program anybody is ever in, is that the athletes want to be there. There is no requirement for them to be there. So we had, guys and girls coming everyday practice who were wanting to have the desire to see what they can get out of themselves. And one of the things with running is that being a great runner is all wonderful and all that kind of stuff, but to see somebody markedly improve with their time from where they began, from a coaching athlete perspective, that is always a great thing. There's a longtime Staten Islander, Darrell Peterson, who's quiet behind the scenes, but he's at all these sporting events and volunteers, and I'm sure people in the running community know who Darrell is. Darryl joined the team. He could barely run a 9-minute mile. But by the end of cross-country season, he was running just around 35 minutes for 5 miles at Van Cortlandt, which was 7 minutes a mile. For him, that was spectacular,
And that's something we love to see here in athletics, our student-athletes progressing both in the classroom, on the course, on the field, the court, wherever it may be. Always exciting to see that as an athletics administrator. But you were a captain during your time on the cross-country team, a cornerstone of the program, but the program did face a lot of challenges during its infancy. What did that look like, some of the challenges you needed to overcome?
Well, cross-country, running track and field is a very hard sport because basically it's day in, day out, everyday training. There's got to be a dedication component with these athletes. You could argue that the other sports have it as well, but sometimes the season is over, and that season could be over for 3-4 months. If you do cross-country with indoor and outdoor like the current kids do, that is a full-year commitment. Traditionally, practice kind of starts on your own July 1st, probably August 15th. Teams start working out, and then you're with these people maybe right through Memorial Day weekend, June 1st, June 2nd. So it's a real grind. Obviously, finances were a little difficult. Our coach at the time, Sal Rizzo, was able to get us Nike racing flats, which is pretty cool, for a D3 program. Yeah. And then in my junior year, the coach here was Ed Healy, who's one of the great Staten Island high school runners of all time from Monsignor Farrell. And Ed also got us Nike sneakers and a little swag, as we like to call it, to bring things in. But in my first year here, the best runner on the squad was a guy named John Down. And John ran like 26 minutes for 5 miles at Van Cortlandt. He was a spectacular runner. Sadly, John didn't really finish at school here, and sometimes you probably see that as a former student. Some kids come into the school, they're here for a year or two, or maybe they get a job in business or a trade or something like that. So the turnover, the influx during those years was not unusual for us. In my junior year, my co-captain, Bob Burrows, who was a guy who ran for Port Richmond High School, he came here as a transfer. That's another thing. You get transfers to come. He came here as a transfer, and Bob ran really, really well, and he got his education degree. And, P.S. around 2010, he was appointed by President Barack Obama to his education council. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable. So, we had adversity, but I think in anything, everybody has to face adversity in their life because that's what makes you rise up to try to, get to where you want to go.
And in addition to your work with the program, you also were a big driving force behind the intramurals program as well here at CSI. What did intramurals look like here at CSI when you were a student? What were some of your fond memories from your time participating in intramural activities?
Well, it's funny because for me, the intramural was mostly related to the running. The guy who was really behind that was Sonny Grasso. And Sonny really pushed the intramurals. Now, what I'd like people to harken back to or use your imagination. We are talking about the old CSI campus, which is now Petrides, okay? So you have that big perimeter with the track, okay? And so Sonny, every year in May, would have an intramural 2.5 mile or 3 mile run or a 1 mile. But it would be, the 1 mile is not hard because basically it was like 2 loops around the whole campus that finished on the track. The 2.5 mile, you would run down the street towards Clove Lakes Park and go down, what's that street called? Little Clove Road.
Yeah.
And then do a loop and come back. And you come back, it's up. And then you finished on the campus on the track. Now, keep in mind, we didn't have streets closed off. This is an era.
That could be a challenge.
Yeah, this was an era with no permits. It wasn't unusual for some road races, even put on by organizations, to warn runners, hey, you're going to be in a free-flow traffic area at this part of the race. So what's interesting is that the intramural races not only brought out students and staff and people like that, but runners on the outside looking to run a race somewhere would come in. And there was a friend I grew up with, Tony Galata. He was captain of the Port Richmond team. He went to Mansfield University, way out in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. And I hadn't seen him for 2 years. And in 1985, was on a lineup for the 2.5 mile. He's there. I'm like, what are you doing here? He goes, I heard there was a race, and like I said, and Sonny was all-inclusive, which I think is great. I think intramurals has to be like that. You got to be all-inclusive regardless of ability. You want to encourage kids and other people to show up and, just have fun and do the best. And most people run the races, even today, even on the New York Marathon level. Most people do it for their own personal reasons, whether they're running a 12-minute mile, 10-minute mile, 6-minute mile, that kind of stuff. And that's the beauty, at least of my sport, is that in our sport, we are all-inclusive. All sizes, shapes, paces are welcome.
Well, my father will love to hear that. I always joke with him as he's gotten a bit older about my prowess in the gym. I'm not much of an endurance athlete, though. He has run the New York City Marathon a couple of times, and he always says, you may lift a lot of weight, JR, as my father calls me, but I've run the New York City Marathon. He'll show me his medal, his T-shirt, something he's very proud of. And there was one time where I tried to run a mile as fast as I could. We'll talk about that a bit more later in the show. We'll tell you how it went. But it was fun, and we had a good laugh about it. While you were here at CSI, 4 years with the program, you accomplished a lot individually as a student athlete and as a leader in the program. What are some of the accomplishments you're most proud of from your time here at CSI?
In our first year, and remember, we were a developing team, we had a solid 4 runners. Myself, John Down leading the way. We had Mike Crow, who later on became an outstanding metropolitan distance runner. We had a guy, Mark Conti, Darrell Peterson, Steve Foley. And later on, junior year was Barbara Rose. And on the female side, the 2 females I remember very well, Dominique Fiazon, who was a DJ for SIA Radio at the time. And she was a runner who just got into it, and she enjoyed it. And we had Mary Salasic, an outstanding runner from Moore. And what's interesting is that in our first year especially, despite the fact it was the beginning of the year, we finished 3rd in the CUNY championships. Hunter College was the dominating program. We finished in 3rd, only 2 points behind City College. Okay. Now the rules of the game was that the top 2 CUNY teams go to the NCAA Division III National Championships, which were held in Cortland State that year. Okay, but our coach at the time lobbied, saying, I know we finished 3rd, but we only finished 2 places behind City College, and we were granted entry. So we were able to compete in Division III National Championships that year, and that was really great time. And, I don't want to scare anybody, but cross-country is kind of like football. All kinds of weather, the race is on. And even the road races, for the most part, rarely do you see races get canceled. It does happen once in a while in today's era, but in the last century, nothing was ever canceled. And the morning of our Division III championships, it was about 10 degrees out, half a foot of snow on the ground, and you're at the line, and the official says, all right, gentlemen and ladies, sweats off. And everyone's wearing shorts. Some of us have long-sleeve shirts with gloves and a hat, but you have the shorts on. And the one thing I learned from coaches at the college here and other coaches, can't control the weather. So, just run. If you worry about the weather, that's one more thing that's going to put a nail in your coffin in competition. So let everyone else worry about the weather because you can't control it anyway. So, and I don't know, for myself, I've always found that I run well in cold weather, go figure. So, we had a pretty good day that day as a team.
Well, you can get the full story of the cross-country program, including a lot of what you just told us, Jeff, over at CSIDolphins.com. Back, I believe, in 2020, we debuted a series called Remember the Legacy. I went back and reviewed the cross-country piece last night, and a lot of the details that you just shared with us are included in that piece. However, we would not have known about the cold weather and some of those other things were it not for your input. A great history lesson for me. Perhaps we'll go back and retroactively add that to the piece, but you can go over to the history section under the cross-country tab over at CSIDolphins.com and check out Remember the Legacy, written about 3 years ago. It's a complete history of our time in Division III. But continuing with your story, beyond the College of Staten Island now, you spent 10 years as a high school track and field coach. You've also spent many years teaching, as you mentioned. You had your education degree. What have been some of the most rewarding mentorship experiences that you've had, and who were some of the mentors that really shaped you during your time here at the College of Staten Island?
Oh, I have to say Joe Barisi, Sonny Grasso on the top, without a doubt. Professor Jabbar was a great presence, always encouraging. I have to tell you, I really enjoyed my time here. The one thing, I know sometimes CUNY schools get a hard knack for the quality of education, but I had an English professor, Eli Stock, who was a wonderful gentleman. Professor Stock taught at Princeton University. Okay, Dr. Fred Binder, who was in this school forever, was the American history guy. If I remember correctly, he was an Ivy Leaguer. It was not unusual to see some Ivy League professors maybe after 20, 25 years in their position, retire and then come to work in CUNY, maybe because the pension is pretty good, on top of the pension they got from the private school. It's
pretty solid.
Yeah, so, the 100 level classes, obviously, in my era at least, were always, beginner classes. But once you got to the 200, 300 level, these were serious things. And I find, unfortunately, that sometimes kids come here thinking that the school might be easy. And then they realize, oh, my God, I have to get this in next week. And the answer is yes. And some of these kids get really shocked by that. And the one thing when I taught at Newdorp High School, I would tell kids who were going to CUNY, do not underestimate the program. I would even say to them, if you're already registered for classes, say in June, reach out to that department, reach out to that professor, ask what books are available. Maybe they'll give you a head start on the books. And yeah, the summertime might be a time to hang out, but maybe you want to get your hands on those books and start, getting ready. I was not superior academically. I had great grades in history, English, but I did bust my butt. I attribute that a lot to running and training, the dedication of doing that. And so when I got into subjects that were challenging to me, I dove head in and tried my best. So, however, though, I will let you know that, and this is on the record, in my junior year, a little ambitious, I decided, and I got permission to do 20 credits, hoping I graduate in 3.5 years. Yeah, but I took chemistry. And yeah, I had to drop the class.
It happens. It happens to the best of us.
The dreaded W. Got a full refund. But, it was definitely a life learning lesson, without a doubt.
I made those decisions quickly when I was a student. If I looked at the syllabus and I saw what I deemed to be an excessive amount of group work, that class was getting dropped real quick. But you mentioned some Ivy League professors here at CSI. My first ever class was taught, I believe, by someone who went to one of the Ivy League schools. I think it was Harvard. I remember later in the semester, he had us do a homework assignment on an article from a journal that was published at Harvard, and I would assume that they're publishing their students because at the time he wasn't very old. He could have been a student within the last 10 years, and he was one of the authors. He didn't tell us that when he gave us the assignment, but I did see his name was on that article. So I believe he may have been a Harvard student.
Yeah, could be. You also have Professor Nassau here, who's now gone on to become a prize-winning author of books on American history. I believe he did a biography either on Rockefeller or Carnegie that won like a Pulitzer Prize a few years ago. So, I always say, you get out of it what you put into it, whether that's sports, academics, or whatever. The dedication component is huge. So
I'll tell you what I got out of my final paper in that class.
Uh-oh.
So I submitted the assignment, and we had to go meet the professor during his office hours to get our grade. So I go over to the office, and I get my paper back with no corrections on it. Apparently, he had a policy of not giving a 90 or above, gave me an 89.5 on my final paper and an A- in the class, my first ever college course. And I had to ask myself, will every course be like this? Do they not give 90s and above? I wasn't familiar with the campus and the professors yet, but I got the rest of my grades, and I did see that it is possible to get a 90 or above here at the College of Staten Island. I certainly benefited a great deal from my time here as a student.
A couple of other things I always think about, especially with the last century, no internet. So when you had Professor David Trabelay, great history professor, or Professor Howard Weiner, another great professor, they gave you topics, say, on the Mexican War. Well, you go to CSI Library back then, but, very scarce. You had to take the ferry boat into Manhattan to go to the New York Public Library. Today, I really feel the students, you have great opportunities. You can go on the archives of the United States government instead of going down to D.C., looking at the National Archives, and you can just type in something. It all comes up. But in our era, we have to do a little bit of legwork, which was kind of, funny and you look back now, it was funny, but definitely challenging at the time.
Well, not CSI students, never, but something very prominent today. That AI, chat GPT, writing papers, not a great thing. I consider myself a solid writer. I never had a problem with the writing assignments.
Right.
It was the mathematics and those very black and white correct answer, incorrect answer topics and subjects that gave me the bigger problems when I was here. But I ultimately did well. I ultimately did well. But
good.
We mentioned it before. You've had an opportunity to give back to the community as a teacher, as a coach. What have been some of the most fulfilling ways that you found to give back since you've left the College of Staten Island?
Well, I honestly feel we all have mentors in our life. It is up to those individuals as they get older, including myself. Do you want to honor these mentors? Do you want to continue whatever they were doing? And I've been very lucky. I was president of the Staten Island Athletic Club in the 1990s. We raised money for programs. We had an outstanding relationship with the creator of the New York City Marathon, Fred LeBeau, the New York Roadrunners Club. And he included us in a lot of things. These days, I'm part of a group called the Staten Island Running Association. I'm the board chair. Michael Schnall is the president of the organization. Our job is to give back. Whatever money we try to raise, we do try to give back. During the COVID period, a legacy of Staten Island's famous runner, Art Hall, the late Art Hall, who was my first coach, we gave 15 laptops to kids in needs through donations and stuff. We have donated to different organizations throughout the borough, the Borough Ambulance Organization. This past year, we organize every year the annual Memorial Day Run. Staten Island Advance put on the annual Memorial Day Run for many, many years. A couple of years ago, they decided, that they were going to move in a different direction. So we took the event, and this past year, the money raised from it is going to go to a veterans post, with Memorial Day being the theme. There is a veterans post for Joseph Merrill, who was killed in World War II. Staten Islander, Merrill Ice Skating Rink in Clove Lakes is named for him. But there's also another famous Staten Islander, Father Vincent Capodanno, chaplain who was killed in the Vietnam War. And Capodanno Boulevard is where that comes from.
Of course.
Both men were given the Medal of Honor. And we found out in February of last year that some Capodanno people are now going to merge with the Merrill Post, creating the Merrill Capodanno Veterans Post. So for our race this past year, we said proceeds from the race will go to that. We are very proud to let everyone know we'll be presenting them with a check for $4,000 from our race. And, I said that's kind of the stuff we do. And they're going to take the money and probably do things like scholarships, any young individual looking for a military career, that kind of stuff. So, we always try to give back. And, there's other groups on Staten Island that give back as well who are very generous with their time. I always bring up Richard Nicotra and his wife Lois, at the Hilton. I just saw recently on SI Live, they gave close to $1 million from the Nicotra Foundation to groups in need. And very, very remarkable. Former Assemblyman Michael Cusick is also a very big, person with giving. And I'm very well aware that Michael has had a lot to do with the track being built outside, emphasizing that there's got to be a steeple pit for the steeplechase, right. With the ramp and the water pit and things like that. And he lobbied hard for that. And, boy, when that thing is finished, that's really going to be remarkable.
It's been really exciting to see all of that come to fruition. We'll get to talk a bit more about that as well later in the podcast.
Wednesday night, November 1st, we have the Staten Island Running Association Marathon Legends Gala. We do this dinner every year at the Staten. Through sponsorships, donations, generosity, fundraising, we have been very lucky to bring in some legendary world-class running track and field athletes. Since 2018, Bill Rogers, the four-time winner of the New York City and Boston Marathon, comes. Rod Dixon, we're honoring him this year, the 40th anniversary of his 1983 New York City Marathon win. If you watch that video, it's very inspiring. The legendary long jumper, Bob Beeman, from 1968, the Beeman-esque jump of 29 feet, 2.5 inches. And the word
29 feet?
29 feet, 2.5 inches. The world record was 27. It's not that he broke it. He shattered it. And the word Beeman-esque is now in the dictionary.
Really?
Yes.
We'll have to flash that on the screen.
Yeah. And Bob comes every year. This year we have Dave Waddle coming, the 800-meter half-mile gold medalist from 1972, one of the most dramatic races in Olympic history. Dave was way back for three-quarters of the race, and then he came on and barely won the gold medal in one of the photo finishes of the Olympic Games.
Not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yep, and for the older crowd, they probably remember Dave Waddle. He was the guy who wore the golf cap whenever he raced. Okay, we're also working on some other people who are coming. But one of the things you mentioned about giving back, we have a series of awards we give out. We have the Vic Navarra Memorial Service Award. Vic Navarra was a friend of College of Staten Island. He was a fireman, and he was also the start coordinator for the New York City Marathon. His wife, Joanne, continues that work as well. This year, Bill Kelly was told in February that he was going to receive the award. Bill Kelly's been a long-time runner and coach, 97 years old, but Mr. Kelly passed away in August. We are still presenting the family with that award this November. We have the Abel Kiviat Awards. Abel Kiviat was the Curtis High School runner who won an Olympic gold and silver medal in the 1912 Olympic Games. the world's oldest Olympic medalist at the time of his death, 99 years old in 1991. And we're giving those awards to Patricia Mulligan and Lou Bergunzi. Then we have the Art Hall Awards, and Aborn Etchison and Luis Vasquez are earning those. The inaugural. Arnold Obie was a longtime Staten Islander, great athlete at Wagner College, but ran many, many marathons, was known as a guy who did the right thing, educator and all that. And Dr. Ted Strange is the recipient of the Arnold Obie Award this year. So, and like I said, this dinner is November 1st. 120 high school kids and under attend this dinner for free because sponsors pay for their seats. Okay? We have a gold package of $750 where 10 kids come for free. We have $375 for silver. 5 kids come for free, and $150 for bronze. 3 kids come for free. And kids from the College of Staten Island cross-country team work the table for us for admission that night. So they get to work, and in return, they come into the dinner, and they have an opportunity to meet these legendary people. So
that's great to hear that our student athletes are able to get involved with that as well. Once again, the event information will be across the bottom of your screen if you want to find out how you can get involved or attend the event on November 1st. But Jeff, all of your work within the community and all of your accomplishments here at the College of Staten Island culminated with your induction into the CSI Athletics Hall of Fame in 2012. The first class, how did that come to fruition, and how did it feel to be a part of the first ever CSI Athletics Hall of Fame class?
It was awe-inspiring because you see the names of the people in the school throughout all the years. As I mentioned before, Evan Pickman, probably one of the greatest basketball coaches ever in Borough history. And, to be inducted alongside Evan and some of these other people was very, very remarkable. Some people nominated me for it, which I'm very grateful for. One was Joe Barisi, Lou Bergunzi, the former sports editor of the Staten Island Advance, and a few other people, nominated me, but I was very, very humbled by it. And it was a wonderful thing for myself and my family that night.
At the same time you were being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the cross-country program was experiencing some of their highest levels of success in recent memory at the time. How closely were you following that, and how much did it harken back to your time with the program? Some things never change. It was a three-peat for Hunter. Previously, they had been the only program to achieve that, but the CSI men did achieve that in the mid-2010s, a very exciting time. How closely were you monitoring that?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was watching it very closely.
I thought so.
It is so great to see those accomplishments in the school by the younger generation. If I'm correct, the coach at the time was Robert Russo-Vikos. Then Drew Gangemi came in, and they had raised the program to even a higher level than when my team competed, and which is great. And for those kids to win a CUNY championship, and of all schools to beat Hunter College, which was top-of-the-line program, was very, very remarkable. Also, Christine Pagano, I believe, was here as well as the girls' coach. And the girls' program also definitely reached a higher level than my time. The big thing, as you know, is the switch now to Division II. Now you're even going to be getting, hopefully, better athletes in the program, with the promise of half scholarships, participate on the team. But, I think of any alum, I think any alum who follows who's a sports alum who follows the sports of their program, you can't help but feel like, great pride and happiness for them, because we were in those trenches as well, so to speak.
Well, since then, a lot has changed. You mentioned one thing already, the move to Division II. Where were you when you heard the news?
I was in a doctor's office, and I
saw
it online.
In detail.
I saw it online. I had to do a double take, only because CUNY schools, the attitude was for many years, CUNY schools were Division III.
You didn't get the early scoop anywhere?
No.
Okay.
Just found out, and it's wonderful. It's another magnet for getting kids to come here, And kids who do buy into the sports programs here or the academic, they realize after a year or two that this place is worth it, Sometimes the line you hear from high school kids when I taught was, well, I'll go to CSI, but then I'll stay there for a couple of years and I'll transfer. You find, though, as time goes on, those kids who do stay here for the 2 years, a lot of them stay. Some transfer, but eventually you find your niche. And, let's be honest, you got to look at your economics. And once again, city worker especially, you're probably looking at a CUNY school. I think one of the great issues facing the young people today, which is already brought up even at the level of national politics, is the college debt. And I think if kids look around and really do their legwork and are willing to look at situations where maybe they're the rare kid who's 18 years old, they already know what they're going to do. And, if it's a certain job with a certain salary and the tuition to a school is commensurate or less than the salary, that's something that you may want to look at seriously. And, like I said, the College of Staten Island, bang for the buck, man. You definitely get it.
No question about it. I came here, spent the 4 years here as a student. I haven't left since. I've been employed here since my graduation date in late 2015. I started here in athletics early 2016. We'll talk more about that story just a bit later. But something else that happened shortly after the move to Division II, the track and field program, both indoor and outdoor, were elevated from club sport to varsity sport. How satisfying was that to see?
That's awesome. That is awesome. In my time in the 80s, cross-country program was legit. When we did indoor track, it was a club status. Unfortunately, sometimes we'd lose kids from that. And outdoor, you didn't really see much going on. And it was hard. It was hard to, keep the kids motivated. My fellow teammates, you had the lure of road races that took place, in the spring and the summer, things like that. But the fact is that to have it all year around now with D2 and the current coaching staff you have, I think that a strong magnet for getting kids here, without a doubt.
And something else that has happened since then, you've taken over teaching a class that is very near and dear to my heart. It's almost story time, but talk about how you came to take over sports management.
Right. Well, I retired from the Board of Ed, from the Department of Education 3 years ago. Always looking for something to do. I was always interested in some kind of adjunct work. I feel, I'm not somebody who sits on the beach and just looks at the water. And as somebody says, there's only so much running you could do. So the opportunity came across to me last year in March, thanks to Dave Pizzuto. And Dave was the former teacher of the class. And the class is sports business management. It's a 300-level class. I have 45 kids. It's on Tuesday nights. It's a virtual class, I guess because of what's going on and things like that. But it's basically kids, from what I could tell so far, feel for the kids that are the students in the class. These students, for the most part, have majored in business management or have looked into a sports component. And, we live we're a ferry boat ride away from New York City. And in New York City, Major League Baseball headquarters is there. National Football League headquarters is there. NHL, NBA, all the major sports, all the major networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, have their corporate headquarters there. So you're a kid on Staten Island, you're looking to pursue that kind of future working for these companies. They're right there, okay? And there's a lot of great stories I know through my life of people who intern at these places. And yeah, the bad news is interning, you rarely get paid, okay?
I've heard.
You probably know.
I have friends.
Yeah. And the good news is you have gotten your foot in the door. They know you. You are a known commodity. So when jobs do open, when you reach graduation time, a post, you might have more of an inside track of getting a position in these areas. You ask a high school freshman what they want to do when they grow up. Sometimes the kid will say, I want to play in the NBA. And you hear that, you probably know more. 700 players play in the NBA?
I think it's less.
All right, so 600?
30 teams, 12-man roster. Probably
Okay,
between 350 and 400.
Yeah, like I said, math was not my thing either.
Yeah, between 350 and 400.
Right. So there's 400 job openings, but 90% of them are already guaranteed contracts. What are the odds of you getting in? And so, in the Staten Island Sports Hall of Fame, you have Staten Islanders who played in the NFL, Major League Baseball, Olympics, things like that. I believe we've had nobody in the NBA. I could be wrong, but I believe that there's no one. But if you love the sport that much, with a class like sports business management or a major like that one day, you are given the opportunity to be around the sport that you love in another capacity. So, the one thing I mentioned is, all these organizations need accountants. All these organizations need people at desk jobs. You're working for a business, and that's the thing. And it's very funny because I am a lifelong Jet fan, and that's a whole
that's
a whole story unto itself. That's my gray hair here. But the injury to Aaron Rodgers last month not only affected Aaron Rodgers, there's a ripple effect. And the ripple effect means that if the team is not successful, you're working for the company at a desk job, you could lose your job just because money isn't being generated by the business. And people selling the jerseys and people doing that.
That's me.
Yeah, people selling the Aaron Rodgers jerseys or anything,
me.
And people who bought those tickets for crazy prices hoping to see Rodgers.
That was me too.
Yeah, now you're stuck. But you could see Taylor Swift this weekend. So I guess if you got the tickets, I guess for some people that's worth it.
It's funny you mention that because the prices for this weekend were down around $50, $60.
Right.
They announced Taylor Swift would be at the game. They immediately doubled.
Yeah, and once again, from a marketing ploy, that's very smart. So, there's different facets of the business. And one of the things I'm hoping to do with my class is one of my jobs for 35 years, I'm a writer for running track and field stuff. I've attended 2 Olympic Games, been to the World Championships. I've been very lucky that I've gotten to know and interview some of the world track and field greatest people all through the years. And with that, you see another facet of business with sport. When I was in Oregon last weekend for the Steve Prefontaine Classic, which was on NBC, we went out to dinner with a fellow named Nelson Farris. Nelson Farris is one of the originators of Nike with Phil Knight. He came out to dinner with us,
Wow.
And he, as a young man, he was a track nut because Nike started off as a track company. Phil Knight was a 410 miler. His coach was making shoes, Bill Bowerman. Yep. But 410 at the University of Oregon was dime a dozen.
Yeah.
You weren't even near the Olympics. That's still great. So, Nelson and Phil Knight and these other guys, they would take their car, Volkswagen or whatever, put all the shoe boxes in there, drive to a track meet and sell it like that. That's how Nike started, okay? They probably had no idea it was going to become the behemoth that has become, and like I said, in the sports business management class, you learn that a lot of these people have a lot in common, almost like with athletes, a drive, a desire, a dedication, try to push. So in my class, that's what we're hopefully going to try to do. I'm in right now trying to see if I can get some guest speakers, including Mr. Farris, a guy named Gene McCarthy who ran ASICS for a few years. Gene grew up in the projects of Fordham in the Bronx, and then became CEO of ASICS. You're not just born that way and you just jump into that. This was a progression of his life stuff that got him to there. And the sports business management class, we try to encourage that, hard work, dedication. You never know what happens.
Well, my journey to working in athletics began in sports management. As you said, a lot of your class, business management majors, that was me. I needed a 500-level course to satisfy my major requirement.
Wow.
So back when sports management started, it was 504, management 504. So I'm sitting in management 410, and a speaker comes in. I believe it was someone who worked in athletics in the intramurals department, came in and said they're offering a new sports management class for anyone interested. I said, sports management, that beats international marketing. I have to take this instead.
Hey, you love sports.
Exactly. So I took the class. The professor was former sports information director David Pizzuto. I got my course evaluation, and on the evaluation it said there's a job for you in athletics. If you're interested, can't say no to that. 3 months later, I was calling games on Sportsnet. I've been here ever since. Never left the College of Staten Island after that.
No, that's great. And you're content. So, you found your thing. You found your niche. So, which is really, really great. And, I showed a film last week in my sports class. The general manager of the Golden State Warriors said, yeah, when I was in high school, I dreamed of being in the NBA, but then I, tapped out at 5'9", which he is. I realized that I wasn't going to be in the NBA, but I still wanted to be around the sport, And if any of you ever want to study the bios of people in, the high levels of track and field, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, some of you would be very surprised how they started out, where they were when they were 20 to 22 years old. Rex Ryan, the former coach of the New York Jets, once again, the Jets, Ryan and his brother were ball boys for some Division II college program when they were 21, 22, where they really weren't getting paid, but they wanted to be around the sport, and that's tremendous dedication. Most people 21, 22 years old, you're out of college. People are saying, hey, what are you doing for a living? And they had dreams and they pursued them. And Rex Ryan today is, a commentator on television and does very, very well as, making some good money.
He does. And you mentioned, too, the people who sell those Aaron Rodgers jerseys could be in some trouble now. When I was in college, I started an online resale business. It began with Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I would buy big boxes of cards, sort them, piece them out, and sell them back. That eventually developed into me selling licensed sports apparel. eBay is a market flooded with counterfeits. I have the real deal fan gear, the name of the store. Bit of a plug for myself, but that's what I was doing before I got started working in athletics. I still do it to this day. Also, Dave and I are business partners. We have a broadcasting network as well, so we get the chance to travel around the tri-state and cover games. Speaking of being where you love to be, whatever it takes to cover sports, him and I are there. It's a great time.
Right. And there's an alum from the school here, Anthony Pierno. And Anthony was on the local radio station here for the college, and did these things like you said. And today he does the sports stuff on WCBS News Radio 880. Like it's a foot in the door.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Sports broadcasting. I remember, as I mentioned before, we're in New York City. Everything is here. Media center of the world. So, you try to break in that way and you try to follow certain things and, you hope for the big break. So that's, there's no excuse for a student here to not take advantage of what's being offered.
Absolutely. And that sports management class, one great reason to come to the College of Staten Island. Another great reason, we have a brand new track and field complex. As you mentioned before, you were one of the guest speakers at that event. How important is that facility and that complex to the community?
Well, from a guy with my teammates in the 80s where we ran on that hard surface, black track that also was ripped up, and everything, to get a state-of-the-art track and field facility is awesome. And once again, it sends a message that the college is serious about their D2 program, okay? And, as I mentioned before, former Assemblyman Michael Cusick, massively helpful with that. And, even though Michael didn't come to the College of Staten Island, he's always had an affinity for the school, for the community, and he knows that this thing has nothing but positives all over it. And once again, I have to tell you, getting that steeple pit, there's a lot of tracks that get built at schools where they don't put the steeple pit in, cost, that kind of stuff. So to have a steeple pit is wonderful. If I'm correct, I believe Monsignor Farrell and St. Joseph by the Sea are the only programs that have steeple pits in the high schools in the borough. I'm tempted to say Susan Wagner, but I'm not sure. But when you consider all the high schools on Staten Island with the tracks, no steeplechase pit. And kudos to Michael Cusick for getting it done.
Can't wait to see it all come to fruition and come together. I know they're still working on, I believe, a throwing area outside as well. That's located elsewhere, if I'm not mistaken, near the front of campus. So we have that as well.
Right.
Plenty of reasons for prospective athletes to check out the College of Staten Island. Now, speaking of Division II and athletes coming here, recruiting's a huge part of going Division II. What's your message to potential recruits?
It's worth it. Like I said, if you have a feel in your 11th grade, 12th grade year of what you wish to do with your life, what you wish to major in, look around at certain schools. You might find, the one thing I've always liked about CSI, even going back to my time, was the versatility of majors. You could have kids coming here majoring in history like I did. You could have a kid coming in majoring in computer science. Those are like two opposites, And nowadays, the versatility of the majors that are offered here. And like I said, CSI is what you make out of it. If you come here and really buy into the school, you can have a great experience. And my 4 years here, and I went on for my master's and my 30 above, all, by the way, at the old campus. But the last class I took for my 30 above, I needed 1 credit. And the phys ed department offered running. And it was taught by Joe Barisi, Sonny Grasso, but it was actually taught here at the new campus. So the class actually started at the old campus, and then 2 months in, they said, we're going to start at the Sunnyside campus. So it kind of moved over, which is kind of fun. But there's something for everyone here. You could be that student who just comes here, takes the classes, and leaves, or you could be that student who comes here and checks out things, walks around, looks at stuff, and says, wow, this is a pretty great facility, And like I said, walking into this, athletic department area with all the stuff on the walls and all the encouragement on the steps and things like that. All you see are positives hitting at you, if you like sports to any degree. Even if you just go to the gym to work out, you still see that stuff. And quite a few students may not be aware of this, but yeah, you can work out in the gym here, correct?
Absolutely.
The membership, the pool, that's all for
Great
you.
Facilities.
Yeah. Students get that. So that's, like I said, the school is very inclusive. You have to find if this is your niche. But like I said, with the D2 stuff being offered, yeah, you're going to get a lot more kids coming here.
One final question from me to you. I wanted to know how you got started because I also wanted to let student athletes who might be interested in running know how they can get started. So how did you get started, and what are the best ways to get involved if you're potentially interested in running or participating in track and field events?
Right. As a sophomore at Susan Wagner High School, there was a social studies teacher, Steve Lerner. Every day during lunch, he would run 5 miles on the track. That's 20 laps. And one day I decided to join him, and I got hooked up. Then eventually I fell in with the legendary coach Art Hall, who was my real first mentor. And in my senior year at Susan Wagner, I ran into Steve Zaccarello. Some of the world-class runners who I have met, Sebastian Coe is the leader of world athletics, the commissioner of our sport. He's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, former world record holder in the mile, 3 minutes, 47 seconds for the mile. Half mile was 1 minute 41. That's 2 laps, 1 minute, 41 seconds. And Seb is a big promoter of our sport and really goes all out. There have always been people trying to tinker with Seb saying, what workouts did you do? What can I do to become great? And Seb always says the line, training is progressive. If you are training and you're making progress over a 10-day, 20-day period, you're doing good. If you're training but you're really not progressing by day 20, you got to revisit and maybe back it off a little bit. So, when people ask me for advice, a couple of things. I tell them to go to a running store. Staten Island does not have a running store, but there are stores in Jersey and Manhattan, Brooklyn. Go to a running store. Have them fit you in a running sneaker. Everybody's foot is different, okay? High arch, low arch, supinate, pronate, flat feet, wide width, thin width. You got to find the right shoe for you. I am sorry to tell you this, but if you spend $100 or more on a running shoe and it fits your foot, that's your shoe. Whether it's Adidas, Asics, Nike, On, whatever these companies are, it just, it's relative to you. I always feel, and this comes back to the legendary coach of Staten Island, Mr. Welsh, I say you jog, walk 10 minutes a day. Don't worry about how far you're going. Just worry about the time. Make it an everyday component no matter how you feel, okay? You got to walk the whole thing, you walk the whole thing. After a couple of weeks, do 20 minutes a day. And once again, build up gradually to this. Doing the weight room is a great thing. I was introduced to the weight room as a young runner. Some distance coaches years ago shied away from weight training. They were afraid you'd bulk up. But weight training strengthens your body and is a huge injury preventer in your sport. Not just running, but other sports as well, especially for the knees and the hips and things like that. Living in the weight room twice a week, 3 times a week, maybe with a 2-day break in between, is really, really good. But basically, you just got to be progressive. If you're looking to run a race, like a 5K or, a half marathon, and you're a beginner, you got to give yourself at least a year. It's a lot of patience. It's a lot of fortitude. But the most important thing for you mentally is to get in the everyday component of training, okay? When in doubt, back off a little bit, okay? Some famous runners say it is better to undertrain than to overtrain, okay? But and I also think flat surface, soft surface is great. Finding a soft surface on Staten Island is a little challenging, but we have some woods and we have Great Kills Park, off of Buffalo and Highland, which is very flat. You want to try to avoid downhills, especially as a beginner runner. Going down is bad for the joints. So, walking down the steps is not good either. Going up is fantastic. It strengthens the hammies and strengthens the quads. Going down is when people sometimes get the knee issues and the hip issues. So maybe you want to take an elevator going down, but not going up. There's also the scientific principle that's kind of accepted that after you work out, you have a 40-minute window to hydrate yourself, to maybe get a little protein in you, whether a bar or some kind of meal, that 40-minute window. After that 40-minute window, the lactic acid conceivably can stay in you a little bit longer. And having lactic acid, no matter what kind of athlete you are, you know this. It's never pleasant.
Delayed onset muscle soreness. My arch nemesis.
Yeah, right. And we all have that. That. And I'm a victim of what's called the 48-hour onset delay.
So am I.
I can have a great workout on a Friday, feel good on a Saturday. Sunday, I wake up, I'm like,
I'm exactly the same. Must be the build.
Yeah. But everybody's different. Different. You got to definitely take that in. But, I mentioned Sebastian Coe before. His father, Peter, coached him. Peter was an engineer, a cyclist who had no running background. And look what he did with him. World record, gold medalists, all this stuff. Seb probably ran about 50 to 60 miles a week in training with the weight room like 3 or 4 times a week. But then you look at a runner like Rod Dixon, very similar. Rod was running over 100 miles a week with the weight room once or twice a week. There is no given way to make it to success. And that's in business as well, There are variables involved, and everybody does it. But the one thing I have found whenever I meet these famous runners and these legends, they all have total belief in their coach, okay? So for the CSI athletes on the cross-country team right now, you got Akil, you have Dan Galfin as assistant, you have other athletes who are helping out. These people know what they're doing. And if you can buy into what they are selling to you, without any doubt, that's the pinnacle. The greatest thing in the world that could happen to you as an athlete, whether it's on the starting line of a race or swim meet, basketball game, is that the work you did is there. And you have total faith in that work. Okay? That right there is an extra boost for you to achieve success.
Well, I have one experience attempting to run. We'll call it an attempt.
Okay.
I was at the conclusion of a weight session.
Right.
I was done, and I was working out at my father's gym in his complex. He lived in a community with a private gym. So he walked in when I was finishing, and I said, "You want me to run a 5-minute mile for you right now?" So he goes, "Go ahead, try it."
All right.
So I was gassed from my workout, but I had done some sprints on the treadmill as my cardio in the past, not much, really little to no running training.
Right.
So I hopped on the treadmill, and I got about halfway, and I realized, and this is a treadmill mile, so it's not exactly accurate. We figured it was close enough.
Right.
So I got about halfway, and I'm like, boy, I'm going to have to speed this up. So I tried to speed it up. And I had to make sure that I was on for the mile. Even if I didn't do it in 5 minutes, I couldn't bow out before I finished the mile.
Right.
I almost passed out, but 5:42.
5:42 is pretty good on a treadmill. So a lot of studies show that you're running on a track or a road compared to a treadmill, you're actually going to go faster.
Okay.
But 5:42 is pretty good. You got strong cardio there.
Yeah, this was back when I did cardio. Now, I was probably 20 pounds lighter, too.
Right.
I had to be maybe 170, 175 back then. I'm almost 200 now, so there's no way. We're not trying again.
Right, could have fooled me, though. But
okay. It's the fit. It's the Nike fit, the track jacket.
There you go.
I came in the right apparel. Jeff, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Final word goes to you. Anything you want to leave our viewers with?
As I mentioned, have total faith in what you're attempting to accomplish. Have total faith for the athletes in this school. Have faith in the coaches that are here. These are not some coaches that they hire on the fly. These are dedicated individuals who have dedicated their lives to the sport that they are coaching. Okay? Just have total belief, have patience, especially with a new coach, new program. Have patience and just stay with it. Even if you don't achieve the great athletic success that you hope, the qualities you develop from you trying to achieve this stuff are going to help you in other walks of life. So keep pursuing your dreams, and don't let anything stop you. And keep this. Most people say this is most important out of an athlete's body. The stuff above the neck.
I can attest to that, Jeff. Again, it's been great having you on. Thanks for coming and joining us here on the Dolphin Pod for our celebration of the 40th anniversary of the CSI Cross Country Track and Field program. Of course, new episodes of the Dolphin Pod will premiere all season long over on our CSI Sportsnet YouTube page. If you're tuning in during our premiere, you are watching ahead of our CSI soccer doubleheader on Saturday, September 30th. And coming up next, you will see the College of Staten Island take on Queens College. If you're watching on demand, thanks for tuning in. And be sure to check out our CSI Sportsnet YouTube channel for much more CSI athletics and for more from the Dolphin Pod all year long. This has been Joe Foreman. One final thank you to our guest, Jeff Benjamin. Thanks for watching.